Seeing none, now is the time to consider consent items 1 through 12. If there's any committee member who would like to remove an item 1 through 12 to be considered separately, please buzz in now. If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent items 1 through 12.
So moved.
I've got a motion by Lewis to approve consent items 1 through 12, second by Estes. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Consent items 1 through 12 have been approved and will be going to the City Council meeting on December 1st. We're moving on to the non-consent items. There are 2 items on the non-consent calendar for the Public Works agenda today, item number 13 and item number 14. I do have 1 public speaker request form. The chair would like to recognize Mr. Chad Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm just here to speak on behalf of the citizens of Ward 3 who currently live in Red Rock Meadows or Red Rocks or the new annexed Countryside Estates. And I've been receiving a lot of phone calls the last couple of years about plowing the road, Sheridan Lake Road, between the city limits and those subdivisions. And just seeing if we can somehow maybe come to some sort of resolution to get that done, because I know it's, as much as an inconvenience, it's also a public safety issue. If the police or the fire have to respond in a weather-related incident, it'd be nice to have those plowed. And I know it's something we have to work out with the county, some sort of trade-off we can do or something along those lines. So I've talked to Mr. Brumbaugh. I think we can probably work something out, but I'd just like to get some direction from this committee and maybe from the council, and maybe we can give them some direction so they can do their job more effectively. Obviously, it's just one of those issues that, we got a pocket annexation going on out there, and that area is not, the road isn't part of the city at this point. Sheridan Lake Road is not. It's a county or U.S. highway. I'm not sure exactly which, but so it's no one's fault. It's just one of those issues we need to somehow come up with a resolution if we can. So we have like a couple thousand citizens out there at least that are commuting every day, and I think just something, if we can make out some sort of solution with the county, I'd really appreciate that. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. As Alderman Lewis joins us back up for this committee, actually, Mr. Lewis, I believe I see Mr. Roberts heading into the door, so I think Mr. Roberts will be joining us on this committee since he's a standing member. But thank you for filling in. And we can talk about that item when we get to item number 14, which is what Mr. Lewis was discussing at this time. I currently have no other speaker request forms for non-consent items on the Public Works agenda, items number 13 and 14. Am I missing anyone else? Seeing none, we're now going to move on to item number 13. Oh, that's an item on the agenda. We're moving on to item number 13, and Mr. Wright was just making sure that I did not miss Mr. Roger Tellyhusen. And as he approaches the podium, if you could please state your name and your affiliation to the city, and we're looking forward to your update.
Well, thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Roger Tellyhusen. I'm I guess for lack of a better term or moniker, I'm the executive secretary or director for the fundraising portion of the soccer complex. And we asked for this opportunity to just update the city as to where we're at. It's been a while since we've appeared in front of the city council. And just wanted to tell you that to date we've had a total of 27 donor names that have been approved and run through the Parks and Recreation Committee for approval of their naming opportunities. Those are significant donors. Construction of the concession stand, let me back up. The fields themselves are already under construction or have been constructed and have been, the irrigation has been put in place. If you haven't had an opportunity to drive out there, I would encourage you, although with the snow on the ground you may not be able to see as much as you might have seen a month or so ago, but the grass is growing in very, very nicely. There's a total of 12 fields that have been constructed and irrigation put in place. And we've been working with JR out of the Public Works office, and RCS is our contractor to do the general construction. And we've just submitted what we hope will be the last information required to be submitted to Mr. Wolterstorff's office to get the necessary permit to start the construction of the concession stand itself. So that should be underway in the next couple of weeks. All of the bids are in, and we're ready to begin construction just as soon as that permit is issued. Fundraising-wise, it's been going very well. This community is very generous. We still have a ways to go, and we will continue with that effort. And as we told you from the outset, we don't expect to play on these fields until probably the spring of 2016, because we allow for a 2-year grow-in period to make sure the sod is well established. That's really all I have, Madam Chair. Like I said, we just wanted to update the city as to where things were at. From a fundraising standpoint, as I said, things are going well. We have a ways to go. I don't really want to release the actual number we're at right now. Our fundraising consultant has advised against that, but I could probably tell you privately if you're really curious. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. The chair will entertain any questions from committee members at this time. I'm currently not seeing any. And the chair will recognize Alderman Estes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Move to acknowledge.
I've got a motion by Estes to acknowledge, a second by Roberts. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries, or the acknowledgement carries. We are now on to item number 14 on the Public Works agenda. This is a discussion and reaffirmation of the snow policy and to authorize the mayor and the finance officer to sign a memorandum of understanding between the City of Rapid City and the Pennington County Highway Department for the exchange of snow routes. And Alderman Chad Lewis did speak on this during the public comment, so if any committee member wants to remember that conversation while we're discussing this after the presentation, that would be great. And Mr. Brumbaugh, you introduce yourself and go for the presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. It's been a few years since we've brought the snow policy before the City Council and this committee, so we thought it was time, 2-3 years, time to bring it back up and let you have a look at it. Also attach the memorandum of understanding that we do yearly with the county for some exchange routes, and in a visual sense, that map is also attached to give you a little better perspective on it. It has been the direction of the mayor and director of public works to provide the safest driving surface possible as fast as we can. To that end, we have to do it per the policy. To accomplish that, we work with some 42 city employees, contractors as necessary, and depending on what conditions we're dealing with, we go out and do the work. With the nearly 400 miles of multiple lane streets in town, it's necessary to establish priorities for the snow removal, and that's basically what the policy does. Priority 1 streets are the arterials, streets with steep configuration or hazardous geometry, that sort of thing. Priority 2 streets are the collectors and sub-collectors, and included in that is the school zones. And I may add that with the school zones, we actually do that at the same time that we're doing number 1. There's a lot of people dropping off a lot of kids at schools. Most people don't know that we have a night crew that works at night, and that's one of their main duties, is to make sure the schools are ready to go in the morning, as well as major intersections. We find that it just saves a lot of phone calls and makes it a lot safer place. And then, of course, priority 3, after we get done with the rest of it, is the residential streets. While we're doing number 1, when you're thinking about hills and that sort of thing, most of these hills are located within residential streets. So when you look at the 1, 2, 3 thing, it makes it look like we don't go into residential streets until after we're done with everything else. But quite honestly, all 3 of these things happen at about the same time, or we're working in all these areas at the same time. It's been our practice to use straight sodium chloride, which is the same as table salt, only in a quarried form, as well as liquid magnesium chloride, which we use as a pre-wetting agent. A lot of agencies, both municipalities and the DOT, use the liquid directly onto the pavement section. We found around here that it just doesn't work as well for us that way. The pre-wetting agent actually allows the material that we put out, whether it's sand salt or straight salt, to stay more where we put it rather than bounce behind the curb into people's driveways, that sort of thing. So it's more effective to keep it where it's at. It also starts the brining condition that you need to melt snow and ice. Like pickle juice, for instance, if you keep adding water to it, it dilutes out. And basically that's what happens with mag chloride and salt. It creates a brine type situation, and as long as we keep the concentration up, it does what it's supposed to do. Now, we can melt snow and ice up to 40, 50 degrees below zero if necessary. It's a matter of putting on enough material. So, now the responses, what was changed last time is the snow depth for these various responses was changed last time we brought it before you. It used to be 8 inches and above for residential. Now with the level A, it's 2 to 4, level B, 4 to 6, and level C, over 6 inches. We try to do everything in town. If it's necessary, we do maintain, well, we always maintain communication with the PD, but if it's necessary, we have Pennington County Emergency Management, and we also have Jerry Wright to help us out if we have any babies that need to be delivered. We in the Public Works Department are continuing to look at new products, equipment, and methods as they become developed and available. Public safety, environmental impact, and policy will continue to guide us as to which products and equipment work best for us. Lastly, we're working with Daryl Shoemaker. He's our new information coordinator, and he's getting out PSAs on a regular basis. And we've also put in a new phone system at the street department to help get some messages out and answer calls after hours. So basically, this is a snow removal policy. It's one that has to be general just by the nature of the work. And we put it out there for your consideration and reaffirmment.
Thank you. This motion is both an acknowledgement of the report and an approval to authorize the mayor and the finance officer to sign the agreement unless any seated committee member wants to separate the two. I currently do have a couple lights up here. Chair recognizes Alderwoman Doyle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question for Mr. Brumbaugh, if I may, is this MOU that we have a complete list of routes that we've exchanged, or is it just additions?
That is the complete list. It's altered a little bit every year. This year, I believe they took the short section of DeGeest off of there from Avenue A. I think they're anticipating possible annexation or whatever, but for whatever reason, the county took that off of their list, and it's outside the counties or outside the city limits, so we don't do it either.
Okay. You did hear Mr. Lewis's request and concern. Obviously, we have no control over what the county does, but would it be a difficult thing if, I mean, it's kind of like a little flagpole development now, countryside, to just put the plow down as we're going out and back into town?
What we would have to do there is add it to our main lines or our level A response. It would be a mainline arterial type road. It could take as many, I haven't looked at it as far as measurements and that sort of thing, but it could take as many as 4 passes to do it. It just takes time. It's like I told Mr. Lewis when he asked me about it. I says, you know, we do what we're instructed to do. So basically, it's a policy decision. If we want to add it to the MOU, I'm sure the county wouldn't have any problem doing that, but it does take time away from the streets we already have to do.
Well, do you know, Mr. Brumbaugh, what the county's policy is on that stretch? I mean, does it line up similarly to our policy, or is it something drastically different?
It's similar. It's one of their arterial streets. They look at it like we look at arterials. So another thing I might add too, it's one of the places where they start and go outside the city. For us, we start on the arterial centrally and work our way out. So it'd be one of the last places that we hit. So, you know, service-wise, I don't know that you're going to see a whole lot of difference on the service end of things. A lot of the response time on any street in town has to do with the snowstorms itself. There's no 2 storms the same. They all hit at different times of the day, different amounts of snow, different wind conditions, temperatures, all those variables that go into it. And that affects the county as well as the city and the state and everybody else that responds to snow removal. So it's a tough question with so many variables that it's hard to answer, but I can tell you that the service would be relatively the same if we had it or the county had it, in my view.
Would it potentially, just be a positive gesture if we reached out to the county and just said, hey, here's what we're noticing, and we're getting the calls for this because, you know, we have Rapid City citizens that use that stretch of Sheridan Lake Road to access the city, obviously, or would you need some kind of direction from the council to reach out and just have that talk so that it's on their radar in case it's not?
I'm sure if I reached out to my counterpart at the county, it'd take him all of 2 seconds to say, go ahead and do it, and we'll put it in the MOU, and we'll be good.
Okay.
So it's a matter of whether...
And on its surface, would you have too terrible of a problem with that?
Not at all.
Thank you. I have already talked, obviously, but there's a very nice motion to be made here.
Chair recognizes Alderman Wright.
Thank you, Jerry.
Thanks, Don. I just want to throw my 2 cents worth because I had your job for 5 years and backed you up for 17. And as for the baby story, just to tell you what happened there is the Solid Waste Division usually had Rapid Valley where we have the worst and deepest snow. And yes, our equipment was sent out the day out of house so a woman could deliver a baby. We were the first responders, but the second responders took care of the delivery. Gives you an example, and Don's absolutely right. It's one of the variables you're dealing with. It depends on the day of the week, the time of the day, everything. I've seen this town wet overnight and turn to ice in a matter of 60 seconds. And how do you deal with that? It's a tough job. So my question, well, there's one comment. I would love to see us get away from the excessive amount of salt because of the damage I see it doing to our concrete pavements, and I see it doing damage to our streams and water quality, and probably our vehicles. So I think if anything we can do, if maybe we need to increase plowing, I don't know, but I would love to see us get further away from it. But anything we can do as a council to help you in the area of customer service, training and equipment and so forth, please let us know through your boss, the Director of Public Works, and the mayor, because I think this is probably one of the most important jobs that you have, and probably one of the most important jobs that people, the public, see at least half of the year. And I think that standards have changed. I remember when I took over the department, the plows kind of went out after it quit snowing. You'd never get away with that today. And people today are used to driving 30, 40 miles an hour on icy streets, and they wouldn't have gotten away with that 20, 30 years ago. Expectations have changed, standards have changed, and our department really hasn't been overly staffed or equipped to meet those expectations. So I think we need to maybe visit this overall, how we support it. And I commend what's done. I know there's many of sleepless nights, many of short days, short nights, long days that are done by your department and other people. And anything we can do to help you, interdepartment cooperation and support is imperative. And keep us posted, Terry. Thank you, Chairman. And do take care of Shared Link Road. It's also my ward. And if that's an arterial road, that is as big a road or as important a road as any other arterial coming into Rapid City, and it should get equal, if not equal, care that the others do. It's that important. Thank you.
If you'll just hold on, Chair would like to recognize Mr. Terry Wolsterstorff.
I had canceled, but maybe I'll talk anyway, just for the heck of it. I just want to clarify a question, because I think Alderwoman Doyle, you were asking if we would have have some communication with the county on how this section of Sheridan Lake Road is prioritized for them, or are you asking us to add it to the MOU and we take it over? Because one thing that Donnie mentioned is logistically in the way that we do arterial roads, as he mentioned, we start from the center and work our way out, whereas the county would typically start at this location and head further out into the county. So I'm not sure how the service would be affected if we're doing a benefit or a detriment to this section of Sheridan Lake Road. It probably just depends on the time or day that it starts.
Well, and the answer to that would be whatever is going to be required to get the job done. Because if their priority, I mean, if they're starting there and we're not hitting that stretch until well after we've plowed a lot of other areas and it's still in need, then there's obviously a difference in policy. I mean, if there's still calls coming in because it hasn't been plowed. I mean, so if we can just line that up and let them know, I mean, because the calls are coming here, maybe they should be going to the county, but they're not. And I mean, it should not be that hard to just open a line of communication and see what we can do to make that roads. We do have a lot of people that live out there. So that's what I'm asking for.
And I think we can have that communication even without adding it to the MOU. I think we can meet with them and we'll figure out the best way to make sure it gets done right away.
Thank you. Chair recognizes Alderman Estes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Maybe Mr. Lewis or Mr. Brumbaugh can answer the question, but I don't know if the Sheridan Lake Road, when Mr. Alderman Lewis gets his calls, had been plowed. I think you get a perception. I think if we're going out, our trucks are going from in town and we're going out to Red Rocks to plow the city streets within Red Rocks, when you're going from point A to point B, are the plows up or plows down? I think it's a perception problem that bother people when they see a truck going down the road and the plow's up. And, you know, the road, Sheridan Lake Road may have already been plowed, but if when our trucks go from Rapid, travel along Sheridan Lake Road to get to Red Rocks, do they leave the plows down or up, do you know?
Up. Our trucks.
Okay. And the road may have been plowed, but I just think that when people see that perception, and I don't know if you know if Chad, if you can delineate between that, whether or not we know whether or not the road was or wasn't plowed, but I just think that it's a public perception that it torques them off when they see a plow that they're paying taxes for going down the road with the plow up. You know, and that's just my opinion.
If I might, Madam Chair. One thing we do with our equipment is we purchase this stuff. The only analogy I've got is a Swiss Army knife. We set them up to do multiple jobs, but they don't necessarily do all those jobs that they're capable of doing at the same time. Typically when we plow in tandem, 2 to 3 vehicles at a time, so that we can carry the windrow from the center clear to the outside edge of the road. If you have one truck, say it's assigned to do sanding operations on hilly areas and intersections in Red Rocks, for instance, and he drops his plow at Wildwood and takes it on out, the windrow is still going to be in the driving lane, and what's going to happen is the cars behind him are either going to bounce in and out of that windrow or they're going to scatter it all over, and you won't know that it had been plowed. So you're going to tie up another vehicle, probably going to take 2 vehicles to plow that. That's one of the reasons we either plow or we sand. Some areas like Carriage Hills, for instance, where the road's a little bit narrower, we can plow our way up, plow our way down. We're starting to do that now. It wasn't the policy here a few years ago, but it's one of the things we have changed, where we can sand and plow at the same time. We're doing as much as that as we can. Main lines, Sheridan Lake Drive, Kenyon Lake Drive, Lacrosse Street, streets that wide take 3 to 4 vehicles at a time in order to get that windrow all the way over. So it's a methodology thing.
I yield.
Thank you. Chair would like to recognize, I was wondering if it came from Chief Multiver or if it came from Mr. Lewis. Chair recognizes Alderman Lewis.
Thank you, ma'am. I guess my biggest thing is, I know I'm not here to micromanage the snow removal, and I understand it's obviously a lot more difficult than just dropping your plow. We've got, like I said, I don't know how many people actually live in Red Rocks, and now we've got the new annexation of Countryside. So we're asking these people to pay their taxes, and they obviously, just like everybody else, would like their services, and I understand it's a county road, obviously. So I think the perception would go a long way towards helping out their belief that they're getting something for their money. I understand they're getting their roads plowed too, but it's not their fault that, that's not a county, it's a county road. With that pocket annexation of Red Rocks, Red Rock Meadows, we have our citizens taking that road all the time. So, and I realize there's citizens of Pennington County as well, and I don't know. If it can be done, it can be done. I definitely want to bring it to attention because I get a lot of phone calls about it, a lot of concerns, and I just want to make sure everybody understands. I'm trying my best to get something done about it because I think it's the only right thing to do if we can. And if we're going to probably keep annexing in that direction anyway, because we've got a couple more neighborhoods out there I know that would probably like to be in Rapid City eventually. So it'd be just a nice little service and a gesture, I think. If we can make it happen, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Currently, there is no motion on the floor. We're looking for a motion to acknowledge the report and approve. I've got a motion by Doyle to acknowledge the discussion and to reaffirm the snow policy and authorize the mayor and the finance officer to sign the memorandum of understanding between the City of Rapid City and Pennington County Highway Department, and a second by Estes, and the chair recognizes Alderman Wright.
Thank you, Chairperson. 2 things I forgot to mention. One is, back in the day, we did a significant amount of public relations, and I think it's probably time we do it again, where we actually did an insert into the journal that actually told not only our policy, but the reasons why, and we answer those questions, why the truck is going with the plow up and so forth, and dispel some of the rumors and help people understand it. Another thing that I've heard in recent discussions, and I think I need to emphasize this to the entire city, is that in a snowstorm, it is a public safety issue. And as a elected official for the city of Rapid City, and having been in the position of operating to address that issue, it is safety, and it requires a dedication and an all-hands attitude from our city employees that are involved or capable of contributing, whether they are in the street department, solid waste, or wherever. If they can operate a piece of machinery and they're capable of contributing, they should gladly do it, because it's part of our mission, is to protect and provide public health and safety welfare to our citizens. I would like that attitude, that culture ingrained into our operations, so that we have the horses and the people to do it, and the attitude. Customer service is imperative, and I think that's a lot of it. And I know you do a great job, but there are problems, and I think we need to address them. And I think every time there's a snowstorm, there should be an after-action review and say what went wrong, and what do we do right, and how can we make it better. If that's not occurring, it should. And please let us know how we can help. Okay? Thank you.
I currently have no further lights up here. I do have a motion on the floor. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Got a motion to adjourn by Doyle, second by Roberts. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you, everyone. There will be a 10-minute recess before Legal and Finance agenda will pick up in 10 minutes. Thank you.